Welcome into this episode of Wear and Tear Bears Postgame Show. I am Mason West, and I'm joined by Sam Householder today again. How you doing, Sam?
All right, that was a wild one we just watched.
I have a hard time really figuring out how I feel about this because there was a point in the fourth quarter where I was like, man, can this just be over so we can do the post game and move on with the week? But then the Bears, clawed their way back into it with a little help from the Vikings, of course. But it became interesting, exciting, and really makes this analysis interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It was I had the exact same sentiment. Honestly, there was a point where I was like, all right, let's just get this over with, and then the last 2.5, 3 minutes, whatever it was, happened, and it was like, okay, maybe we'll have an exciting one to talk about, and then overtime happened, and it was like, okay, here we go again.
So just diving into this game, kind of our overarching viewpoint before we dive into specifics,
Mm-hmm.
what did you feel like how the Bears offense operated more or less from start to finish?
Honestly, I liked a lot of what they did. It seemed like they had some really good answers for Brian Flores' scheme, and they were able to move the ball up and down the field, not consistently, but I think that's just a product of the season overall, right? Like there's still going to be moments and drives where you're left wanting more, but overall there was a lot more good progress, and I think unlike earlier in the season and other games that we've seen from this unit, when the things that didn't work, like the run game never really got off the ground, it didn't completely screw them over. And there's been a lot earlier this season where if they couldn't run the ball, it just ended up taking a lot of sacks. The pass game didn't work, whatever. But it seems like Thomas Brown is a lot better at finding other answers and finding things that do work and making what he has work. And I thought, overall the offense was really good beginning to end, and it honestly kept them in the game at the end when there were points where it was like, oh, here's another game where they're not going to break 20 points.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I would agree. You start off the game three and out, and you have to punt, and then you punt again. But then you go ahead and you get that touchdown. 7 play, 79-yard drive, and I think the most important thing that was woven throughout this whole thing was Caleb Williams played a very, very good game, and that can't get lost. In the dynamics of how the game ultimately ended.
Yeah.
But he ended up having another over 300-yard game, right? 340 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was 32 for 47, so for the most part, accuracy was there. And even some of the ones where he missed, if I never saw Keenan Allen run an out route again, I think I could be okay with that.
Yeah.
Maybe little things like that where he, sometimes Keenan just wasn't getting the right separation, maybe a little bit of an off ball from Caleb.
Yep.
But there was a lot of those kinds of misses versus ones we saw earlier in the season where it's like, man, that deep ball just isn't there. Take that one play, where he ends up evading a tackler out to the right. There's a free runner, he's able to evade it, and then he hits DeAndre Swift with a beautiful touch pass. They're on the run too, which is just ridiculous. The fact that he has it actually on the run, that's a kind of a throw that the first 8 weeks or so, I think he might have missed, but he's starting to settle in, and the accuracy is improving.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I had that throw down to talk about a little bit later, but yeah, for sure. We are seeing those things, and you're right. The misses aren't quite exactly the same as the misses earlier in this season. They're less frequent for one thing, but when they are happening, there are other factors. For example, there was one late in the game where he just had to throw it because he had a rusher in his face, and Keenan hadn't barely even turned around yet. And then Cole Kmet had a big drop, and things like that, where earlier this season, like you said, it was just a lot of, misses, near misses. Oh, if he had just put a little more touch on it. And it does seem like those mistakes are getting fewer and fewer.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you saw a lot more spread out across the team as well, right? DJ Moore had 7 targets. Keenan Allen had 15. That's ridiculous to me. That's a whole other conversation. Cole Kmet had 10. Robin Dunze had 10. So you're seeing the ball get to more playmakers, which is great. It keeps your offense more multiple, and it keeps these guys engaged, which is fantastic. And I think that the way that the plays are being drawn up is helping with that, but also Caleb being able to get through his progressions is helping that. The offensive line held up pretty well today, actually.
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job handling the scheme that everybody's been talking about, right? And I do think I understand the feedback I often get when I talk about how much the Vikings blitz is, oh, well, but they don't really blitz every play. They just look like they're blitzing every play. And what is unique about the scheme is like who they drop and when they drop. Like I understand that there's nuance to it, but at the same time, it's still impressive that a rookie was able to hold his own against that. And more importantly, the offensive line, because this offensive line hasn't really been able to block hardly anything at points this season. But again, they found good answers. They did a lot in the quick game again, a lot more of those screens. And for whatever reason, those screens are working, where earlier this season, it seemed like we all knew every screen was just going to be a 4-yard loss.
Yeah, absolutely. That was something for sure I was going to bring up, and I'm glad you did, was for a while there, the wide receiver screen was like the bane of my existence. Like, just stop calling these. But on one of their scoring drives, I think they called it 3 times in a row, ultimately leading to a DJ Moore score. The efficiency of, I think, the splits being a big difference. I mean, Thomas Brown tends to have his formations a little more narrow, it seems like, which helps offensive lineman angles, things of that nature. But also just the general flow of the play calls. That's significant, very helpful. And one of the sacks, I think it was the second one, maybe, Braxton Jones let the defender just dip inside. And that's twofold. One, Braxton's got to be able to block that better. It'd be nice if Tevin got over a little quicker to be able to help on that. And it's running, I believe they're running a stick concept to both sides, mirrored routes. Caleb also has to get the ball out a little bit faster there. So that's just one of those plays that hopefully that gets better over time with him getting the ball a little quicker. And let's be real, your offensive line has to help you a little bit there.
Mm-hmm.
So now flip it to the other side of the ball. What are your thoughts on the defense?
Cool. On one hand, we saw them get a lot better pressure today than they have been the last couple games, but overall the coverage was just not there. Now, I think some of it was, it really seemed like to me, defend Justin Jefferson at all costs and let anyone else beat you. And well, it turns out Jordan Addison can beat you. But that's kind of a gamble you have to do sometimes in the NFL, especially someone of Justin Jefferson's caliber, right? He is probably bar none the best receiver in football. I think there's a lot of people that would say that. He's certainly top 3. So I think that it was a little bit of a pick your poison. And, on one hand, I can't fault them for getting beat, but I liked a lot of what Jalen Johnson did. It looked to me like, I don't know if he was completely shadowing Justin Jefferson, but he was over there a lot. He got 2 PI calls. I think one was more obvious than the other. At the same time, overall, I thought he had a pretty solid game. To me, it was Tyreek Stevenson and Terrell Smith and some of the other guys that ended up on Jordan Addison that really held it back today. But again, I liked what I saw from the defensive line. They were winning a decent amount. They got a couple sacks. You still want more, right? Like, I think they only got 2 sacks, or 3. They got 3 sacks, but you wanted more because they were close a couple times. But overall, not the defense's best performance. But then again, we can talk about defensive play calling too, I think, especially at the end.
Yeah, all really good points. I mean, like you said, it's a bit of a pick your poison. Now, you don't necessarily want Jordan Addison to have 8 catches for 162 yards. Maybe you want to button that up a little bit. But like you said, I mean, Justin Jefferson only had 2 catches for 27 yards. Some people are going to point to the pass interferences and say, hey, those count as catches in a way. Whatever, they don't for me. Even if you did, that's still 4 catches, like in a touch. That'd be 1 touchdown. But you did a pretty good job saying Justin Jefferson won't beat us. Unfortunately, as you said, your second cornerbacks just don't really have the play style to be able to handle a Jordan Addison, who is a good route runner. And I think the biggest problem for me at the end of the day is, and I've said this when Eberflus was first hired, I said this when they decided to keep Eberflus, I hate this defense. I know it's not your normal Lovey Tampa cover two, but that's still the base principle is the bend but don't break motto.
Yeah.
And you saw that throughout the game where they were just got chunk plays allowed, not explosive, but those moderate explosive plays. I mean, how many times did they get out of a third and long because you allowed on 10 yards to go, you allowed a 12-yard reception because as you see, there's just so much cushion there. And that went into overtime. And now when the team only needs a field goal in overtime, you cannot play that way. You have to play tighter. And they just didn't adjust to that. So I think a lot has to fall on the play calling and what's happening there, especially when you know that your line is not. Yes, they got there 3 times, but Darnold was sitting there way too comfortable in the pocket. He's not exactly the most dynamic runner, and he was a bit hobbled near the end of the game after he had the ankle injury. You should have been able to at least get more hits on him and disrupt more of those throws.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, the soft coverage, TJ Hawkinson is probably still camping out in between zones somewhere right now. I mean, it was ridiculous. And that is the thing that drives me nuts. And I was having flashbacks to like the late Lovie Smith era. And I understand that some of it is just a product of the scheme, but it just drives me up the wall when I see a team win on first down, win on second down, and then give up 3rd and 12, 3rd and 13, 3rd and 9. Like that stuff just ticks me off to no end because those are the downs you should be able to get off the field, and they're downs where you can be more aggressive and blitz. And a couple times they did, but they just still couldn't get home, whatever it was. And those are the things that just drive me insane and are gonna haunt me this week.
And then, of course, special teams giveth and special teams taketh. The Bears they get their field goal blocked again, which almost looks like a photo, exactly the same things over that left side of the line. And they actually changed it for the following field goals, right? They ended up moving Darnell right over to the left side and putting Jake Curran over to the right side just to try to switch that up. But then they also got an onside kick. So, you get a mixed bag when it comes to special
from DeAndre Carter right after he muffed it. So yeah, it was definitely a mixed bag on special teams today. There was, I think that's 3 good, 3 bad. It was certainly a giveth and taketh for sure. DeAndre Carter, like I felt bad for the kid. He had 2 kind of bad returns, but then he gets the really good one, and so I thought that was good for him to see that sort of redemption. For sure, that first blocked field goal, I thought, oh, here we go again. Now the questions are going to start. Now is Cairo going to be in his own head about it? So it was good to see him rebound as well, but definitely a mixed bag overall and not what you want to see. Although at the end, I think that they can at least hold their head high that they were able to convert that onside kick and get them to overtime, even if it was a special teams play then that ultimately cost them.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to pop into some of our categories. All right, first up, so as we thought and not. Basically, this is just where we pick something that we thought was going to happen that did, and something we were a bit surprised by, that we thought would happen and did not occur. What do you got?
I think we expected better offense. I don't know if we expected it to this degree, but it was something that I expected. And honestly, and then I guess another thing would be Aaron Jones running through the Bears defense. Once again, the Bears run defense is suffering.
I think that's a really good one. Honestly, I was going to say the exact same thing. Ultimately, you ended up seeing him go over 100 yards on the ground, 106 specifically, with any of that long 41. And it could have been worse. There was a couple things that were called back. I don't think this is really going to change anytime this year. Right now, the Bears don't have literally the physical bodies to stop the run well. On the broadcast, you actually heard them talk about how it's impressive that the Vikings get as good of a pass rush as they do and stop the run as well as they do, because normally you have to kind of switch bodies back and forth in order to make that happen, but they can do it with kind of their original front four. The Bears just straight up can't, especially after, and we keep saying this week to week now, but when you lost Andrew Billings, it got even worse with that. So, his as an Aaron Jones' prolific running was not something I was too unexpected, or I should say I expected it. In terms of unexpected, I really thought that I did. This seems like a cop out, but I did not think Jordan Addison was going to go off like he did. And I think I can finally sit here and say I was wrong on my pre-draft assessment of Jordan Addison. I thought that he was a little too slow. He wasn't crafty enough in his routes, and he would just be, a tier, definitely like a solid tier 2 guy at best. But when you take away Justin Jefferson and he can have a game like this, and Addison even did this a little bit last year when Justin Jefferson was out, he clearly is better than I thought he was going to be. And I think that's true for other people too.
Something I didn't expect, the comeback. I honestly really thought the Bears would roll over there, and I was really impressed that they were able to erase a 2-touchdown deficit late and complete the comeback and get a 2-point conversion, recover an onside kick, all those things that just rarely line up, and especially going the Bears' way. And they did, even if ultimately the game result was the same.
I'll say next, it's going to be a good day. This is just something positive that we got out of this game. I could go for some low-hanging fruit, and I think I will, because this is the most important from here on out. It's Caleb Williams, right?
Absolutely.
It's the fact that I reread his stats off. I won't read them again, and it was the quality of the plays too. There were some really tough throws in there. There were throws from in the pocket. There were throws from out of structure. You could see the excitement that he had, that he brought to the rest of the team. The windows that he was able to throw through. I mean, there was that one dart that was just literally. Yeah. I don't understand how it got through there. And then he was taking some checkdowns when he needed to. He gave you the full shebang that you wanted. And as you talked about earlier, he was also let down by some guys. There was a drops by Cole Kmet. There was a one on a third down to Keenan Allen. That's why you're brought here, was to be able to catch that ball, even if it wasn't a perfect throw. So the fact that against a good defense, because that's what everyone was circling earlier, like, oh, you only played the Panthers, you only did this against these bad defenses. This should be the answer at quarterback. Now he's got to get some of the other pieces to go along with it.
Yeah, and he would have had more yards too if the one play to Keenan Allen wasn't a toe out of bounds. Honestly, the way I was watching the game, I had the radio stream going, so I was listening to Joniak and Thayer, had the game on mute, and to my eye, honestly, without listening to the TV crew, I honestly thought it was going to be a play stands, because it didn't seem like there was a open and shut angle. Like, yeah, it certainly looked like his toe was on the ground, but I don't know. I was just a little bit surprised that one got called back. And then, like you said, the couple drops and things like that. So it could have been even better. I 100% agree that from here on out, it's all about his development. And this is what you wanted to see. You wanted to see him go against a good defense, play well. And again, in a game where it was basically one dimensional, Caleb Williams ended up being the Bears' leading rusher and their leading passer. And that's not, that was typical under the Justin Fields era. That's not been the norm for Williams. And I don't think, everybody makes a big deal too. He's all about keeping his eyes downfield and being able to keep the throwing option open until as late as possible when he is scrambling. So to see him put up these passing yards against a good defense in a game where he doesn't have the run support, it's a really good sign for the quarterback development. Since you did that, I will go with, I guess we'll talk about him, Keenan Allen. I know, you were saying if you didn't see another out route from him, I get it. Like, he's not the guy he was in his prime in Los Angeles, pardon me. But he was really good today. He had a season high, Bears career high for him in receiving yards. He caught almost everything. He did have a drop, and then the one pass that kind of sprung off his hands because Caleb might have just had a little bit too much on it, and then the other one so there were a couple misses there, but for the most part he was really solid. Had the touchdown, right? Yeah, he had one of the touchdowns. So overall, it was a good day for Keenan Allen. 9 catches, 86 yards. So he'll be my something positive, because he was making plays all over the field. So was DJ Moore too. So really it was kind of a pick your poison with the receivers, but I'll highlight Keenan.
Yeah, it was really interesting when you bring that up because you take Keenan Allen, he had, like I said, 15 targets, 9 receptions, and you take like a Rome Dunze, he had 10 targets, 5 receptions. I thought that after the last couple of weeks, what we saw from Rome, we'd get a little more of him,
For sure.
but it seemed like some of the Rome routes, or at least the Rome targets, were some of these like last ditch effort, getting to the third read. It just wasn't versus Keenan's routes were very much like first read, second read,
Yeah,
and that's clearly right now at least the bread and butter what the Bears want to do. And I just want there to be just a little bit less. Like on the 2-point conversion, I don't need
sure.
Keenan on that route trying to break away and run away from Harrison Smith there. He just doesn't have the speed to separate right now.
Yeah.
I'd rather that be DJ or be Rome.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was not crazy about the 2-point that did not get converted. I didn't like that play call. I don't know why they think that fades are still, you
Fades
hear
suck.
you hear the analysts talk about it, and the really sort of advanced stats people don't really like the fade route because like, yeah, the old way of thinking was saying it's a 50-50 ball, but really when you look at the likelihood of completion, it's like a 10% ball. So yeah, not crazy about that play call to that specific player, especially then when you consider later in the game, there's a big 4th down conversion that Rome had in traffic, like a true, like sort of 50-50 ball. And it was like, that was what he did in Washington. I watched a decent amount of Washington games last year. And that was when I really started to fall in love with Rome Odunze. So yeah, there are certain plays where you're wondering why the selection still has Keenan running those routes versus the routes that Rome is running. We have seen, like you said, I was a little surprised that Rome wasn't more involved today, but maybe there was some matchup that they liked there on the defense. I don't know, but it was a little bit surprising to see so much less Rome. Although, like I said, Keenan played really well.
All right, our concussed corner. Something in the game that was so odd the decision maker must have been concussed. Mine's more just about the setup from the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There was the play that the Vikings challenged, which was huge for them in terms of where did Jordan Addison go out of bounds. And Mike Pereira stated that you cannot use the boundary cam as a coach's challenge boundary cam on a coach's challenge because not every stadium has it. But if it's a scoring review, you can use the boundary cam. And that might be the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I think there are tons of differences between stadiums. And, you could talk about turf versus grass. You could talk about indoor versus outdoor. There's all these different things that are different. If you want true efficacy across stadiums, that should be a mandated thing. Like you need to have a boundary cam in every single place. And at the end of the day, it's just about getting the call right. Why would you poo-poo a piece of technology or a view that helps you get the call right just because insert whatever other stadiums don't have it?
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good call. I don't have anything to add because I agree with you that was a very silly sequence. For me, I think the defensive play calling in overtime is where I'm going. I just thought keep playing back in the soft zones and letting TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison, and even there was the one play to Justin Jefferson, just let him sit down there and eat away at those yards in a critical situation was just very frustrating to me. As soon as it got over the 50-yard line, I was like, oh, well, it looks like this one's going to be over. And then the big play to TJ happened, and it was like, all right, yep, wrap it up. So, yeah, that was just it was again where you just have yet another brick in the wall of like, here's the entire mansion we've built of questionable Eberflus game management decisions. And yeah, to have a defensive play caller come up with that in a do or die situation in overtime was very frustrating. But really, it even went back into regulation time because, again, it just seemed like 3rd and 12, 2nd and 12, 3rd and 13, like 3rd and 10, like they were stopping him on 1st and 2nd down and making him get 2nd and long, 3rd and long, and the Vikings it felt like converting every single time. So that was to me just the baffling decision that you can't come up with anything else. Overall, the Vikings were 6 of 13 on third down. Yeah, just infuriating.
Yeah, if I told you that in overtime you had the team you're playing in a 2nd and 17, a 3rd and 10, a 2nd and 11, and a first and 20, all within the same drive, and I told you that that team ended up scoring a field goal to win the game, you'd be like, no, how did that possibly happen? Like, you work so hard to get them in 3rd and 10, and then I don't get how you got Byard on Addison in the first place, and then you allow a 13-yard, right? Know where the sticks are, and play situational football, and that just wasn't the case.
Yep.
We here for moral support. This is an area that we just need some improvement on, something that has to get better. What do you got?
Third down defense. I thought that it was not good for the Bears. I think, we just kind of went over it just to rehash that. That would be my focus, because it just seems like, it feels to me like the defense is getting worse as the season is going on. And I get that there's injuries and attrition and things like that, but when this was the unit that said that they wanted to be top 10, top 5 this year, it's really frustrating to see this happen week in and week out. The Vikings ended up with 452 total yards. That should not be going on when your defense is supposed to be the strength of the football team and the unit that has the consistency in play calling and head coach and all that. That shouldn't happen.
For a while, right, you were able to hang your hat on, well, the defense only let up 19 points. The defense only let up, 20 points. What else are they supposed to do? And I think that was true for a while there. But the offense pulled its weight today, scoring 27, right? The defense allowed for 30. Is that the biggest issue, the blowout we've seen? No, absolutely not, right? I mean, like, Dallas scored 34 today. Tennessee somehow, I don't get it, scored 32. But at the same time, right, you should be able to hold, especially like when the preview show, I talked about this. Sam Darnold will give you the ball if you set him up for it, and you just weren't able to take the ball away from either. So this defense needs to be held accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time, I just, especially late in the game, I was like, okay, is this the drive where Sam Darnold's going to give you one? Yeah. And it just never happened. And credit to Jonathan Owens for forcing that fumble really early in the game, but it just seemed like later in the game, where you really had some momentum at times, they just didn't come up with anything. And, some of it is a credit to Darnold, because I'm not even sure, other than that Kyler Gordon throw where Kyler just, Joniak even said in the moment, like, he used the spidey sense. I mean, he just had an incredible break on that play and was lucky to get a hand in there. But other than that, there really weren't many balls that were even hitting Bears DBs in the hands. So, on that front, credit to Darnold. But at the same time, this is a quarterback that you were pressuring. Like I said, credit to the defensive line. They showed up today. But even then, you couldn't get him to give you one. And this is a quarterback who almost begs to do that at times.
So I think I was going to talk about the run game, but I think just because of how much Caleb was balling, you just didn't really need it. Now, I do think I hate the fact that Roschon Johnson only had 2 carries. That bothers me. But I think even more importantly, more big picture wise, you need to figure out this pass rush, which again, I don't think is happening this year. I've gone back and forth on where I would want the Bears first round pick next year, already thinking about that to be. And a game like this now, it shifts me more towards D-line, right? For a while, it's always been like, oh man, we got to figure out this offensive line. But Sweat can't be everything. He had a sack today, which is his first, I believe, since September 27th, that game in London. He just has nothing else going. Javon Dexter is doing a decent job of pushing the middle of the pocket, but right now on the other side, you have DeMarcus Walker, you have Darrell Taylor, just kind of, other guys, Austin Booker rotating in there, but you're really not getting anything from them. So for now, the rest of the season, you have to figure out a way to generate pass rush, even if it's, bring in extra blitzer, or, you feign that and you still only bring 4. Other teams freaking bring only 2 and you're able to get a sack. So that has to be accounted for. And then again, looking forward down the road, looking into the spring and next year, I think for me, I'm leaning more and more towards potentially using that first round pick on an edge.
Yeah, it's all about, the NFL is pretty simple, right? It's all about being able to have a top 5 quarterback and arguably a top 5 rusher. Those are like the 2 most premium positions in the game. Montez Sweat is great, but he can't do it alone. Shout out to Jacob Martin getting another sack today. But yeah, him, Booker, Daryl Taylor, DeMarcus Walker, it's just kind of a rotation of bodies, it feels like. And there's no true number 2 on that line to pressure opposing offensive lines. So that it's going to continue to be an issue. And I think you're right. We've seen the offensive line get a little bit better here with whether it's play calling or scheme choices, whatever. They were banged up at points this year. So the offensive line has gotten better and is currently playing better. But I am still, it's kind of been a running thing. I've been like tweeting and telling people when they text me or whatever, is like, if the Bears draft isn't just like some order of O-line, D-line, O-line, D-line for like the first 3 rounds, then we're all going to be super upset. And I think right now I would definitely argue, especially looking at the draft class, it seems like there's some good edge rushers and some decent offensive line depth that maybe you should go D-line, O-line, and then back again or whatever, or D-line, O-line, O-line. Like it's the defensive line needs help.
All right, we got one more break, and then we get into the last part of our show. Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So, turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. I have used multiple sites and apps to enhance my game day, and Underdog is quite unique. Something pretty cool is their vulture protection. If you select a designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry and they get vultured, they will rescue your entry. Red Zone Rush is a game you won't find anywhere else. Just pick whether or not a player will score a touchdown by swiping right for yes and left for no. Simple as that. Plus, your entry will automatically boosted and you'll get a 51% profit boost when you play. This season, Underdog is going to be running a special promo or bonus almost every single day, like Profit Boost. Pump up your winnings in just a tap when you apply the boost to eligible entries, discounts. You'll get adjusted projections on certain players' stats to give you a better shot at a big W, and free picks. They're basically a sure thing. A player just has to get higher than, let's say, 0.5 passing yards for that selection to win. Plus, all new users you get a free pick. Download the app today and use code CITY, CITY, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every hair-raising touchdown, just select higher or lower on Underdog. Unless you're 18 plus, 19 plus Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your next play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT STEP to 3342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. What's important? Stat. This is just a stat from the game that we felt was important and ultimately the outcome of the game. What do you got?
I got 398 total yards of offense for the Bears. I thought that was a really important step. Again, sort of showing that they had to be one-dimensional because the rush yards were certainly not there today. Number 1 rush defense that Minnesota came in with was flexing today. But I thought that was an important stat to show where this offense is and specifically where Caleb Williams is, because I think, bar none, I would say this is his best game, over like complete game as a passer. I mean, he was good today. He did take a bad sack in overtime, but other than that, I thought it was the offense's maybe not their most complete game, but probably their best game.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I was trying to figure out exactly where I wanted to go with this one because on paper, a lot of the numbers don't exactly scream like, oh, this is like a huge problem for you.
Right.
So I think ultimately where I ended up was for like, let's look at the passing yards for the Vikings. In the first half, they had 81 passing yards. And then the second half, they had 173. You can't let them just all of a sudden like take the top off and start throwing the ball on you because they also got away from Aaron Jones a bit too. Because that was really where I was scared that Aaron Jones would just run the ball. So again, that just connects back to our point that we've been making throughout this entire show so far, where you just let Sam Darnold, who's having a real his best year as a pro, but still you're letting him just take big chunks each time because he's standing back there with a good amount of time and just letting things develop and just threw the ball all over you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think especially with that first half, the splits there was a point in at halftime and then early in the third quarter where just by looking at the stats that were on screen and not like doing the hard math on it, but just quick math from what I had picked up on the graphics on screen, I think that there was a point in the third quarter where Sam Darnold, like 85% of his yardage was from Jordan Addison only. I mean, at halftime, you said he had as a team, they had 81 passing yards, but I think even in the third quarter, he was still under 100 yards passing Darnold. So at one point, Jordan Addison was flirting with 100 yards and Sam Darnold was like barely over 100 yards passing. So for that to then end up where it did, where Sam Darnold himself had over 300 yards as well, it is that's a bad stat for your pass defense.
Absolutely. All right. Our kombucha peak performance moments. Kombucha is a premium performance-focused kombucha crafted specifically for athletes and active individuals. This revitalizing beverage blends the traditional benefits of kombucha with nutritional enhancements to support energy, hydration, and recovery. Use code BEARGUTCHECK, BEARGUTCHECK, to get 15% off your order. All right. Mine is going to be when the drive before the field goal, right? So like that last touchdown where he ends up finding Keenan Allen for a 1-yard touchdown, because I think for that one to be able to, you're kind of out of the game, you're not really in the game, to be able to put not just that one, but even the one before that where DJ Moore had the 10-yard screen, to be able to stack those two in a row for Caleb, even if they hadn't made it to overtime, I think would have been a good launching point for him going forward. Just to say like, hey, we can, pick up these chunks down the field. I can take over and I can dictate what's going to happen in this game. And then, of course, right, it's not just the DJ Moore touchdown. Then you get the Keenan Allen touchdown. Then you get the crazy onside. Then it stacks in a way that allows you to go to overtime. But just to have the confidence, have the skill level, and to have the team around him in a way where you're able to march down and get both of those touchdowns when the game seemed more or less over, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, that's a great choice. I just had down the 27-yard pass to DJ Moore to set up the field goal to send him to overtime. I mean, at that moment, it was very good clutch play. Not sure how DJ Moore gets lost by the defense and just ends up being so wide open. So a little bit of luck in that, but it was just a huge moment that I didn't expect, especially with under 10 seconds at that point. By the time it was completed and they were running to spike it, that was to me a defining moment in the game, kind of runner up to yours, because obviously that previous drive really put him in that position. And I would also say too, I would say the onside kick itself ended up being a defining moment because it didn't even go 10 yards, but you kind of get this lucky bounce. It goes off the shin of a Vikings player and right into your hands. And then they were conferencing up, and my wife and my daughter are watching the game with me, and I'm kind of excited, but I'm like, well, hold on, I don't know. They're conferencing, and I said it didn't go 10 yards, so I don't know if this is gonna stand. And my wife's like, but it went off the Vikings player, and I was like, yeah. I was like, this doesn't happen very often, so it wasn't like fresh in my mind that like that was I couldn't remember the rule, so I was like, well, I think you're right. Like if it touches the Vikings player, but at first before I realized it did, I was like, well, this didn't go 10 yards. This isn't going to be the Bears' ball, and then so that ended up kind of being the defining moment too, because that was the catalyst for overtime.
Oh, and you have to also add in the layer that at the end of the day, like good things don't normally happen for the Bears when it's like a luck of the bounce kind of thing. So you had to assume that, well, technically by the law, yes, it would have been the Bears' ball, but some weird universal thing would have made it not the Bears' ball. At least that's how like most Bears fans probably felt.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Our master player of the game, aka our MVP. The master can close the teeth with a force of up to 55 pounds on the incisors and 200 pounds on the molar. Really strong muscle, super important for everything you need to do in your day. So that is our MVP. Who do you have?
Well, I will leave the easy one for you, and I'll go with Montez Sweat. I thought that 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, 2 QB hits. I thought he played really well today. Notching his first sack since like you said, the September. It was really good to see him kind of back to, he showed up on the injury report. He's been playing through some stuff, I think. And again, just kind of being the only thing on the Bears defensive line that's been able to be consistent at all. And so teams have been focused on shutting him down. It was really good to see him kind of being back to being a game wrecker, especially coming up clutch. The one sack he had came late in the game on Sam Darnold in a critical moment.
Yeah, it's really hard to think about where Montez Sweat currently falls in terms of like, do I need you to play better, or do I need the environment around you to be better, or is it a combination of both? Because like you said, I mean, he's been battling injuries. He's constantly on and off the injury report. He has not had this is his first sack in a long time. But you also look at what he's rushing with along the line, and it's not great. So I think I probably lean a little closer to I need him to heal up / I need the rest of the line to do their job a little bit. And yeah, that was an absolutely huge play by him. Without that sack, you're looking at a different game. And also, it was almost a fumble. He almost ripped that out. Mine, like I said, it's got to be Caleb here. If it's not Montez, like you mentioned this earlier, he had 33 rushing yards, which led the team. The running game was pretty horrendous. DeAndre Swift had 2.3 yards per carry, and Roshan had 2 carries for 2 yards. You got nothing from that run game. So the fact that Caleb Williams was your best rusher, the fact that he threw for, again, 340 yards, the fact that he was the heartbeat of this team throughout the game, he was the one that got you down there and scored 2 touchdowns and then, got you in position for the field goal. You see him talking on the sideline when they flip over there to certain players. So, without Caleb, you're not in this 27-point world. For all the Tyson Bagent lovers out there, he's not getting you to a 30-27 loss here. You're not even sniffing that. So maybe we can finally put that narrative to bed. I'm sure it won't, but that's the hope. I mean, Caleb did it all today.
Yeah, absolutely. And he absolutely balled out. And even when they were behind, never really put the ball in harm's way. There was one almost interception that hit the ground or whatever. But honestly, like I understand that there's been this sort of building narrative that like, well, the coaches have like coached him to be so conservative with the ball that now he's not throwing touchdowns and he's just focused on not turning the ball over. Like maybe that's the case, but I don't know. Throwing up 340 yards and two tutties and no turnovers, I would take that. I think anybody would take that just about every week because more often than not, your team's going to be in a position to win. And they were in a position to win today. Unfortunately, they just couldn't move the ball in overtime, and the defense just let the Vikings march down the field. And then, along those lines too, for giving him the MVP of the game, which was easy choice. I also just say shout out. He broke the rookie franchise single season passing record, or the rookie season passing record. And he's now tied for the rookie passing touchdown record with Charlie O'Rourke. So hats off to him on a career defining day, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be very easy for individuals who are, non-Bears fans or even haters within the Bears world, because for some reason there's a lot of that within the people who are fans of the Bears, to point at that and say like, oh, it's about time, or like, oh, like those numbers to hit are so low. At some point, someone's got to do it. And and Caleb is the first to do it. And, whether that's because he was able to start week one, unlike other quarterbacks, or, I mean, I don't like dragging his name or anything, but I mean, like, how many 300-yard passing games did Justin have as a Bear?
Mm-hmm.
I think Mitch had like 6 or something like that. I'm probably off. Like, I'm sure someone will correct that in the comments. But I mean, Caleb's already had a couple there. So, like, that's huge as a Bears fan and big for this Bears team.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Prognosis period. So this is just looking ahead a little bit what we have. Yes, I mean, was it a bummer that Caleb took that sack that really forced them into a position where you weren't going to be able to march down and even try to get a field goal? Yeah, absolutely it was. I'll be really interested to watch the all 22 and see what develops there, like what the routes look like downfield. You can't hold up all that long. It's either got to get out of the pocket, throw it away, or try to scramble and pick up a couple, which he did all day. So I was very surprised when I saw him hanging, like, what the heck's happening here? I think he got a little bit feeling himself in kind of like superhero mode where I'm just going to get this downfield. But going forward, that's a good learning moment. Move that forward. It's a short week. You got to have a short memory. You're playing the Lions on Thursday, 11:30 kickoff, right before maybe a lot of people will be sitting down to eat their Thanksgiving dinners. I mean, we talked about this previously. The rest of this season is about Caleb and his development and what the pieces we know will be here are going to look like. So DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Kyler Gordon, does Jaquan Brisker ever get back on the field this year? What the heck is the answer at corner 2? And can Gervon Dexter take the next step and create, instead of just being a pressure guy, get a couple more sacks stacked there too, and also a little bit more in the run defense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are all, development of young players, development of your rookie quarterback. That's really what it's going to be to close out the season. I think we all know we're marching towards another Black Monday and coaching hiring cycle. It is what it is. We can want them to fire Eberflus immediately, and we just know it's not going to happen. So just strap in and look for the silver lining in whatever happens the rest of the way. Thursday is definitely going to be a incredibly tough test. The only sort of silver lining in that is the Vikings, even though they've turned their fortunes around, they still haven't been good on Thanksgiving. I want to say Dan Campbell has maybe one Thanksgiving win or 0, I think I heard. I didn't have time to look up that stat before we jumped on here, but I know that they've been very bad on Thanksgiving, especially over the last 10 years. So there is that. It is an early game. It is a weird game. It's also a game that the Bears have kind of been in several times in the last few years. I know the roster turnover has been a lot, but there should be some people in the building that are pretty good at preparing for that short turnaround. So I don't know. I guess you can have a anything can happen mentality heading into Thursday, even though it looks like it's going to be brutally difficult. And Detroit, again, I don't think they allowed a touchdown today and have just been obliterating opponents.
So it looks like the last time the Lions won on Thanksgiving was in 2016 when they beat the Vikings 16-13.
Yeah,
which is not great.
Yeah.
What is interesting though, I mean, you're 0-2 in your division, but you've lost by a total of 4 points in what many people are considering the best division in football right now. So we're not here for moral victories, but the fact that in the last 2 weeks, I mean, both of these outcomes are better off than I expected in these 2 weeks. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure. And, if they can play the Lions tight again, I think you get another sort of moral victory. And as hollow as those ring to, I think, a lot of fans right now, I think you can go back, though, and say, well, how did they lose those games? How did Caleb look? And that is truly the most important thing right now from here on out.
All right, that's all we have. Just as a heads up for everyone, there will not be a preview Bare Bones this week because we're not going to record Thursday morning, nor are we going to do Wednesday night because there's a different show Wednesday night. So get all your other content, Second City Gridiron, whether it's in writing, whether it's in the videos or the podcast. There will be a wear and tear that's probably going to go up Friday morning. I'm not going to do it Thursday because I care about my family. So I'll do a quick recording Friday morning. Sam, thanks for joining me. Tell everyone where they can find your stuff and all your things because it's good stuff.
Yeah, thanks. I'm on Windy City Gridiron, 4 times a week. Got different posts going on over there. I'm usually on the Sunday morning live stream when we do those. We're out on that for a couple more weeks with the Thanksgiving holiday and things. But otherwise, I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at Sam Householder. So follow me there and find more great stuff at Windy City Gridiron.
All right. That's it, everyone. We will check in after the Lions game this Thursday. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.
Bye.